Miami began their season with a competitive effort and some strong performances, but ultimately lost a tight game to the Orlando Magic. What do the Heat need to do better? We'll answer that in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, however you might be tuning in, on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio. I'm here with David, Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. Got a bunch to get to today, including some players who impressed in their first game of the season. We have some questions about the Heat's approach in the fourth quarter. We are recording this, of course, David, after the Heat lost to the Magic on opening night, 125 to 121. I think there was definitely some positives in this game, but also some concerns. I suppose we should probably start with the negatives because it was a loss after all. The crunch time offense to me is still a concern. The Heat went 3 minutes in the fourth quarter without a field goal, which allowed the Magic to take the lead after the Heat had been up by as many as 7 points in that fourth quarter. Turnovers were an issue down the stretch. I think they had 6 turnovers in that fourth quarter. Rebounding became an issue, especially in those last couple of minutes. And so when you look at a lot of the ways that this Heat team is different than last season, we'll get to all of those here in today's episode. But one way that they were the same, at least for tonight, David, was crunch time offense, still an issue. They didn't have that closer when they really needed it, and the Magic did. They had Powell, they had Franz Wagner, they had Wendell Carter Jr., I guess. But for the Heat, keeping it local, this was a team that went 14-28 in crunch time games last year, and now they're 0-1 this year.
It didn't feel like the offense was so much of a problem in the fourth. They did score 30 points. This was a really high-scoring game. So they did drop 30 in the fourth. I think the problem was that they gave up 35. So when I look at the fourth quarter, it wasn't even really that they lacked scoring punch because I think some guys did step up. Powell was phenomenal all game long, and he was pretty big in the fourth as well, finishing with, eight points in the fourth. I think Andrew Wiggins did a great job, also had 7 points, hit a couple big free throws, was aggressive, got a good call that Orlando managed to challenge, and it did go Andrew's way when it showed that he was actually fouled in the attempt. So he stepped up in those moments. So I don't even think that the offense was necessarily the problem. To me, it was really the defense. They got outsized, out-muscled, out-rebounded. And I know that we'll talk about that a little bit later with some questions that our listeners had. But that's really the focus here because it just didn't seem like they had this incredible energy level. They were really good, really energized. I thought it was a really strong showing for about 45 minutes of the game, maybe about 44 or so. Either way, until the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game, they looked like they were playing at a really high level. And I thought they might actually find a way to beat a team that a lot of people are looking at as a playoff contender, maybe even a strong finals contender. So that was a strong showing overall. But what really stood out to me in the fourth quarter was that they did get a little sloppy down the stretch. They were trying to maximize things and just didn't have the size and able to do so. Defensively, there were some players out on the floor that I think gave up some opportunities for Orlando, and maybe they didn't need to be out on the floor in those key moments. And they just did get outsized, too. That was a big concern. Wendell Carter was quiet all game. Bam shut him down completely, took him off the bench. In our preview with Locked On Magic the day before, we had talked about that matchup. Bam versus Wendell Carter Jr. being a key one. Carter wasn't a factor, or at least he wasn't for about 45 minutes until the last few minutes of the game where he really stepped up. He had 6 rebounds by himself in the fourth quarter. That's not going to get it done.
Yeah, and to your point, David, like rebounding was a concern down the stretch. Turnovers was a concern down the stretch. I did think defensively they had some miscues. The way that it's similar to last year, though, is that they found ways to lose in the fourth quarter. Like this team found creative ways to lose in crunch time. Rebounding was not an issue for most of the game. Turnovers was not an issue for most of this game. Defense was not awesome, but I wasn't like, oh, wow, it's glaring. Like there's definitely things that we could talk about in terms of pace and the way the Magic were pushing the pace. Obviously, the Heat pushing the pace, and this had been a priority for both of these teams going into this game. But it didn't feel like those things were an issue for 45 minutes. And then for the final 3 minutes, all of a sudden they became an issue. It reminds me of Eric Spoelstra thinking he has a timeout or just finding finding ways to just lose games. I don't want to make too much out of the negative part of this. The Orlando Magic are widely considered one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They were at home. This game was evenly played the entire time. It's not like the Heat got blown out in this one. And there are a lot of positives from this. And I guess, if there's among the positives, I thought the offense did look really good for most of this game. They scored 121 points.
Yeah.
You and I were texting during the game. This did not look like the offense from the preseason, where turnovers were a concern. It always looked like they were almost moving too fast for their own good. The shooting was up and down. They didn't get up a ton of threes in the preseason. They got up 35 3-pointers in this one. You'd still like to get a little bit more, but man, they got to the basket a lot. And so I'm not going to complain, right? Like, I'd rather get to the rim a bunch if that means that I'm going to give up a few threes. They did take some mid-range shots, but even the mid-range shots tended to be the ones that were more in the paint as opposed to those like 17, 18 footers that you don't really want a whole lot of. So the offense overall, I thought looked really good. The pace was staggering, David, in this game. And for the first time, they actually looked like they had two hands on the wheel of this thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Again, it is, for the most part, watching that game, it's encouraging. I think Miami certainly looked better. We talked about what this team looked like in the preseason, and you and I were both very clear about, well, we really can't take much from preseason, but undefeated. I mean, sorry, not having won a game is not having won a game, regardless. And you'd like to see at least the process working towards something. And it didn't seem like that was the case during preseason. We didn't know what to expect. And against a team as big, as physical, as defensively oriented as the Magic are, this could have been a really lopsided game against Miami. And they could have found a way to really have just been blown out. To their credit, they were really solid. I think they did a really good job with pace and everything else like that. But they do need to make some tweaks there, because I think they found a way, like you said, to lose a game. They were up, what was it, 7-9, like in the fourth quarter, yeah, at one point. And so they just allowed a basket here, a foul there, a missed opportunity, a turnover in key moments. They have to find a way to improve there. And I think there's one particular player that we'll talk about in the next segment that I feel was mostly responsible.
Talk about him now. Loss. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't talk about it. I thought you were going the other way. Sorry. We could talk about Norm Powell, because he was.
Let's do that.
He was the bright spot in this game. So Powell finishes with 28 points on 9 of 19 shooting, went 4 of 8 from 3-point range, 6 of 7 from the line. He had 9 rebounds, 4 assists, did have the 3 turnovers, which weren't great. But overall, what a performance from Powell. And incredible. What stands out to me with him, he just makes it look so easy, doesn't it?
Yes. Really good game from him. Like, I mean, this is a guy that I think a lot of Heat fans probably don't even know about. I mean, he's been buried in the West Coast in Portland or with the Clippers, and he wasn't really. I mean, he was a bright spot with the Clippers, but again, it was the Clippers. It was Kawhi's team. It was James Harden's team. And then Powell's kind of more of an afterthought, unless you're a real hardcore fan that's watching these West Coast games. You might not have seen him over the last couple of seasons. He was coming off the bench for Toronto earlier in his career, and you probably didn't watch much of him then either. So for a lot of fans, they might be like, who the heck is this Powell guy? Well, we've known about him for a while. He was fantastic, and he just made it look easy. Like, he had no problems. You talked about during the preseason that they weren't turning the keys over to Norm and letting him run offense. Well, it didn't really matter. He was just, give me the ball. I'm going to go to work, and he did so in a very easy and confident manner. Like, he was just really, really dominating. One great possession there where he put up a 3-pointer. It carried off the rim. Miami pulled down the rebound. No hesitation. The broadcast crew was like, no hesitation from Norm. And I believe me, that was really a big moment, because then he wound up getting the ball back, hitting another 3-pointer at a key moment there. And that was really big. And then towards the end too, like with 30-something seconds left on the clock, he just races down court, yams it right over Paolo Banchero, makes it look really easy. And he just doing a variety of different ways of either getting to the paint from behind the line. Scoring is not a problem with Norm Powell. Even his defense, I think, was much better than anticipated. He was pretty solid overall. I don't think that was the concern defensively. Maybe a little undersized, giving up a couple possessions, trying to get a little too physical to compensate for a lack of size or something like that. But I'm not even concerned about that. Given how good his scoring was, it was a really strong showing for in his first game with Miami. He looked just as comfortable like he'd been here for a long time.
Yeah, defensively, I thought he did a nice job fighting over screens. Like, he talked about giving more effort during training camp and preseason. That definitely looked like it was the case. But offensively, look, Powell was a plus 12 in a game that the Heat lost by 4 points. He had the highest plus minus of anybody on the team, and it really felt like that. He felt like Miami's best player in this game. He played like Miami's best player in this game. There's this thing, we've talked about this before on the show, point fiving, right? Make that decision, shoot, pass, or dribble within a half a second. And what Powell does is even faster than half a second, right? It's like point one-ing with him. He's just so quick to make a decision. And yeah, he's still not necessarily used as the primary initiator, right? And that's okay. He's so good at getting the ball thrown to him and then making that quick decision, doing something with the ball. That's where his strength lies, right? And clearly Eric Spoelstra realizes this, and it's why I said what I did coming out of the preseason. He's not going to be a primary pick and roll kind of guy. Miami's not even running a ton of pick and roll, so it doesn't even much matter for this team. And so, Davion comes up, pitches it out to Norm Powell, or maybe Bam has it and he pitches it back to Norm Powell from the elbow, and then Powell's just so quick to be like, all right, I've got a little bit of space here. I'm going to drive to the basket. Or, hey, you're playing a little bit off me. I'm going to pull up from three. I don't really care where I could be. It could be a deep three. And he makes them. He's so fast with his decision making. And that's what I think when I say he makes it look so easy. I think that's what makes it look so easy. He's not out there thinking. He's just doing. And it's so much fun to watch, especially when it's going in. He has a nice floater game. The three-point shot is smooth. The drives are physical. He's a very north-south kind of player. And I think it's the kind of thing that this offense hasn't had in a really long time. Anything else on Norm Powell before we do some more player spotlights in the next segment?
I think it's just going to give Miami hope. Like, this is what the difference is going to be for this team, where a lot of people might be writing off this roster. That confidence and that ability to score with ease is going to help Miami, because they do all the other little things for the most part pretty well. Maybe not in the last few minutes of game like they did tonight, but for the most part, he's going to give them a chance to be in almost every game this season because he's that good of a scorer.
Got some positive performances from some other players on the roster. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. I love that you're getting the same quality service that you might have had before with every other service, but for a fraction of the price. And the setup is super easy. You kept your number, and then you're running in minutes. It's that easy. Ready to say yes to saying no? Well, make the switch over at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Upfront payment of $45 is required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees are extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments necessary. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. So visit RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know that we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Let's spotlight some players from this game. I want to start with Davion Mitchell.
Okay.
What a game. 16 points, 12 assists. I mentioned Norm Powell had the highest plus minus on the team. Of other guys that played 30 minutes, Davion was the only other one to have a positive plus minus in this game, and that makes a lot of sense. He was awesome. He was great from the beginning of this one. He had 4 assists and 5 points in 8 first quarter minutes. And what really stands out to me with Davion Mitchell, and we know about the defense with him, right? He's going to fight over screens. He's going to be a dog defensively. He's going to be physical with you, all these things. He's an underrated offensive player. And it's not just because he shot 45% from 3 when he got traded to the Heat last year. The thing that I always pointed out with him the moment he got here, he has this fastball pitch of a pass.
Yeah.
Like it comes whirring at you, right? Like you've got to be ready for it. And it felt very sort of out of place in the offense last year. And
Not
it
so
feels
much.
very much at home now in this fast-paced offense. And so does Davion. I think we're in for an even more well-rounded offensive season from Davion Mitchell. As long as they're continuing to push the pace like this, he feels very much at home. He loves to get up and down the court quickly. He loves these hit-ahead passes, like very Kyle Lowry-esque in that way. He's not only being helped by the pace, I think he's often the one, and the point guard should be doing this, he's often the one pushing the pace. So, I think after Kasparas Yakachonis had those 10 assists in his preseason debut, we talked about, wow, it's really nice to have this rookie and have a point guard who's out here able to push the pace, and obviously Yakachonis can and wants to do that. But let's not sleep on Davion. He is very capable of pushing the pace from that point guard spot. He gets downhill, very much like Norm Powell. He's gonna try to get 2 feet in the paint. He's gonna be trying to finish at the rim. He's very adept at kicking out of those possessions, and again, just keeping that tempo up. And I think he was a huge part of Miami's offense in this game.
He was fantastic. Getting the starting job too. I think we had talked about that. This was the lineup that made the most sense with him and Nico out there. So Kel'el Ware coming off the bench in tonight's game. And Mitchell just seemed to flourish. Really good point by you about how he kind of fits into this kind of offense. Last year, it's a little slower. You're still kind of trying to figure out Jimmy on the roster, Jimmy not on the roster, whatever. It was just a very strange season to try and kind of build any kind of momentum, but you still saw flashes. And yet now when this is the identity and this is what you're leaning into, fits perfectly and does really help to set that pace and bring that tenacity. If you're a Heat fan and you don't love watching Davion Mitchell play, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're missing out there in your life, because this player just makes everything exciting on both sides of the ball. Like, he doesn't give up. He's got this energy. It's really fun to watch him play and thrive in a team that kind of just needs a guy like him to really step up. At this point, I'm almost curious to see what happens when Tyler Hero returns, because it's almost like, do you have to keep him or Powell off the bench? Like, I don't know what happens there. Like, it's an interesting situation, because Davion just seems like he's the right player for the point guard position, not just because of what he does offensively, but what he does bring defensively as well. So a lot to like in his performance there. But can I talk about one player in particular if we move off of Davion? I got to say, this was a disappointing Bam Adebayo game. And that's kind of where I want to take this right now, because I like what we saw from Davion Mitchell. Clearly, I think Andrew Wiggins had a solid game. We'll talk about him a little bit later. We talked about Norm already. But going 4 of 13, not good. Not good. And I'm sorry. This is Bam does so many things well. I think he did a really good job, mostly on Paolo Banchero. His defense, his timing, was active as a rebounder, and yet was really auspiciously quiet in the last few minutes of the game, and gave up a key rebound to Wendell Carter Jr. as well. Now, that wasn't necessarily his fault. The ball caromed off at a really weird angle and seemed to just go completely over Bam's head and land right in Carter's hands. So that's not really his fault, but
he did get out muscled though. Like he wasn't in great position regardless of where that ball was going.
Right. And even getting a foul on Desmond Bane too when he was scrambling for a loose ball. Again, it's hard to criticize him for that, because that's effort. Like, he's diving to the floor against a really strong backcourt player in Bane, and yet he still was overly physical and did commit a foul. So, but it's the 4 of 13. Like, there were moments there where he should have hit a couple easier shots. This was a game where if he had just been average, if he had gone 6 of 13, they win the game. Like, it's that simple. Like, I think it would have been enough. And so he needs to step up. He really does. And I thought we were going to see that effort from him all game long. And I was pleasantly impressed with all the other things. We talk about that. We know we're getting that from Bam, but that's not enough. And I feel like he's going to defer a little bit too much to Powell now and not necessarily want to take on that extra responsibility as a scorer. And that's not what he's there for. He has to be able to provide a little bit more of that. He was able to get to the line and capitalize on most of it, 5 of 7 from the line. But still, that's not enough. 4 of 13 really is just kind of a stinker there. And it just kind of leaves a blight on otherwise a pretty solid showing overall for Bam.
I tweeted after the third quarter for people wondering, for people who question Bam Adebayo's value still, just look at that third quarter. I might have tweeted prematurely there. He did have a really good third quarter. He was 2 for 2 in that third quarter. Made a number, 4 rebounds, 5 points or something. Made a number of really impressive defensive plays and just kept everything together during a big Heat run. That was the only good stretch of the game for Bam. He was really quiet in the first half, and he was bad in the fourth quarter. You mentioned that rebound. I fault him for that offensive rebound. Wendell, the Heat have a chance. They're down 2 with a chance to potentially get the ball back with 10-ish seconds left, and Wiggins has a really good contest on Paolo Banchero and forces a miss. And all the Heat need to do is get that defensive rebound to get a possession with a chance to tie or win the game. And Wendell Carter Jr., who was bad for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters.
Really?
Suddenly just finds like this extra bit of muscle, and then Bam just looked like he had ran out of protein. I don't know what happened because he just starts getting pushed out of the way by Wendell Carter Jr. over and over and over again, including on that last rebound. The Magic get the ball back on that offensive rebound. Carter makes a free throw, and then it's a 2-possession game, and the Heat don't really have a chance with 6 seconds left to do much of anything. So, and then they lose the game. Is a tough performance. Bam, you mentioned he was 4 of 13. He was 1 of 5 from 3-point range, 3 of 8 from 2-point range. It wasn't good either way. And I thought that the Heat did a nice job after a quiet first half from Bam of trying to get him more involved at the start of the third quarter. They ran a little bit more pick and roll at that beginning of the third quarter to just try to get him something. I still just wonder where Bam's offense is going to come in this particular scheme. When you're not running a ton of pick and roll, you're not running a ton of dribble handoffs. It's a lot of push the ball, find a weak link, and then drive against that weak link. And if the shot at the rim isn't there, kick out to a shooter, and then go again. But I did think that we saw flashes there in the third quarter of ways to get Bam more involved, and I think that's something that the Heat are going to have to build on. Let's take a break right here. I thought it was a nice game from Wiggins. You mentioned that too. Little bit of a quiet nights from Kel'el Ware and Nikola Jovic. We'll talk a little bit more about Eric Spoelstra's lineup decisions in this one, why we didn't see Bam and Ware together, and what if we had seen Bam and Ware together in those crucial fourth quarter minutes at the end of this game? Would that have made the difference? We'll talk about that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Skims. When I found out that Skims was making underwear for men, well, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, and I just had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, whether it's fit or comfort, or just finding the right style for me. And Skims has changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with a perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the Skims boxer brief, and I'm hooked. Those are the perfect ones for my particular lifestyle. They move with me, they never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day, whether I'm working out, running errands, playing with my son. They're the most comfortable and reliable underwear I've ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. So shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know we sent you. As you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. That's skims.com, skims.com. We'll be right back.
All right, thanks to our Locked On Heat Insider community for sending in some questions for the post-game show. If you want to join that Everydayer Club, you can do so by using the link in the show notes. It gives you access to us, our game notes during the games, and a chance to ask us these questions for our post-game show. So let's jump right in. One Locked On Heat Insider writes in, do you think that they should have found a way to put Ware in for rebounding in the last few minutes, David? What do you think?
Absolutely. I think he could have been a difference maker out there. I think you were a little concerned about maybe getting into foul trouble in what was a close game, because he does get a little, not absent-minded necessarily, but as he's trying to do something, using his physicality and his size he could get a little caught up in a moment and maybe commit a foul. And you don't want to do that in the waning moments of game that's so tight and everything else like that. But you wind up leaving a player out there, in my opinion, who struggled defensively mightily. That's Jaime Jaquez Jr. Like I talked to you about it during the game, and it just seemed like he was a real, for as good as he looked, and he did really look good offensively. Again, a lot of the spin moves and things that we saw from him as a rookie, comfortable mid-range jumper that I don't think we saw from him at any point last season. Not that I can recall. It was just very rare to see him as fluid as he looked today offensively. But defensively, it was clear also that the Magic, who aren't exactly a powerhouse offensively, even with the addition of Desmond Bane, they were targeting him. They were trying to get him into every play. Franz Wagner was attacking Jaime mercilessly, especially in the fourth quarter.
When it wasn't Nico, it was Jaime. They were going at those two guys all night. Yep.
Yeah, so it's a concern. So he was out there in those moments, and I think he was getting picked on and probably wound up being not much of a factor. And I would have liked Ware out there, to be honest with you, because I think he would have at least added some size, and maybe Carter doesn't feel as comfortable being that aggressive. Maybe he's not in that same position. He would have had to maybe climb over Ware's back in order to get down those rebounds. Not that he couldn't have done it, but you at least want to throw up some kind of a roadblock, an actual physical roadblock to getting those key rebounds at those key moments. And I think for that, Kel'el certainly would have been a great help.
So I want to read this next question and then keep having this conversation because I want to kind of push this conversation forward. Malachi writes in, it feels like to me that Ware might have been more injured than we thought. Why did Bam and him not play together at all? I feel like it would have helped us down the stretch. So again, kind of talking about rebounding there. We did not see Bam and Ware together at all in this game. Now, it is worth mentioning that Kel'el Ware was questionable as of this morning. Was there a minutes limit on him? Did they just not want to throw him out there in those crucial moments against a physical Orlando Magic team? That's possible. He did just play 13, 14 minutes in this game. Bam played 34. Nico played 23. I thought it was a very quiet night from Ware and Nico. I just don't, as good as you feel about a bunch of other things from this team overall, it's going to be really hard to win a lot of games if you're getting really nothing from the other, from your front court, basically at all. It was a bad Bam game. It was a quiet Nico game, and it was a quiet Kel'el Ware game, partly because he wasn't on the court a lot. But even when he was on the court, I didn't feel like he was making a tremendous impact. You know, he had a block shot. He wasn't rebounding amazing. He had 4 rebounds in 14 minutes. I mean, that's okay. He had 7 points. But it wasn't like this tremendous Kel'el Ware game where he was forcing Eric Spoelstra to play him. Now, I will say, it obviously would have been nice to have him, especially on that last possession when Wendell Carter Jr. got the that last bucket. But Orlando was playing with one center in Wendell Carter Jr.
Yeah,
I think Spo was probably a little concerned about them getting spaced out. He probably wanted his best rebounder, his best defensive rebounder, and that is still Bam, by the way. If you look at the Heat's defensive rebounding rates,
sure,
they do rebound best as a team when Bam is in there, as opposed to when Kel'el Ware is in there. But could he put both of them on the court? Maybe, but then that forces Bam out away from the basket potentially, guarding Powell, whatever, all these other things. It's really easy to say in hindsight that Kel'el Ware should have been in there. I don't know. I could go either way. Your point on Jaime is well taken though, and it would have been nice to at least see them together at some point in this game, right? Like again, it was very strange. We didn't see Bam and Ware play a minute together in this game. That part feels strange to me, especially against a bigger Orlando Magic team.
It feels a lot like Spo's rotation choices last year too. Where I mean, that was the case even when they were starting together. It was either like one or the other. Especially down the stretch where it didn't get a lot of those key moments, those opportunities in clutch time. And I think the best closing lineup against the Magic, and I'm not going to say that you have to stick to it. This is game 1 of 82, so you don't necessarily have to continue to go this route. But I think you put Davion out there for sure, Powell out there for his defense, Wiggins, who was really solid today for his two-way versatility, and you put Bam and Ware out there. And I think that's a good balance. That should have been enough rather than having Jaime out there and kind of forcing that. I know you're looking for another ball handler, a guy to initiate offense or bring the ball up court or something, maybe be opportunistic with his offense, but it just wasn't getting done. I think towards the end of the game, they were kind of figuring out what Jaime was capable of, and they were still looking to attack him defensively, and so he's a liability on the floor. So this isn't necessarily, again, on Jaime. Bam was a concern. Nico was a concern. There were players there that struggled to some degree, and you had a lot of what we saw last year where it was kind of a player thriving in one direction and not necessarily in the other, and you need more two-way versatility. But at least if you're going to put Ware out there, I think it would have added just enough size to make things a little bit more difficult for a big and physical team like Orlando.
Yep. Can't disagree with you. It feels like Spo in this game, at least, and in the preseason and in everything that we've kind of been hearing, is trading defense for offense a little bit in order to juice the offense. In that case, that's to this last question from Billy, who writes in, couldn't watch the game, but I followed on the ESPN app from watching the stats. It doesn't feel like scoring is going to be the huge pain point that it was last season, especially when Tyler Hero returns. If there is a positive from this, David, and maybe this is a good way to end the episode right here, but I'm going to say something crazy. The Heat lost this game. For the first time in a long time, I had fun watching a Heat game. It was fun.
It was.
It was a fun game. They scored 121 points. The broadcast had this. It was the most points they scored in the first quarter of a game since in a season opener since 2022, 2021 or something like that. I thought this game was played at a really fun pace. I thought there was a lot of good positives coming out of this thing offensively. I think there's obvious things that you want to build on, obvious things that you need to address. But after an 0-6 preseason, where you and I were coming away from this, I'm like, are we sure about this offense? Like, are we sure this offense is going to work? This game showed something between the preseason and 3 days of practices and opening night against the Orlando Magic. And we said this even after the preseason. You don't want to put a lot of stock in the preseason. NBA preseason matters way less than people think it does.
Right.
But the offense looked good. It looked like they knew what they wanted to do. And if this team is going to choose offense over defense sometimes, yeah, maybe you could be more situational in some of those decisions if you're Eric Spoelstra. But overall, I'm here for it because at least the game was joyful.
It was a good pace, good offense. And I think, you called it specifically. I think the fact that Mitchell and Powell are your backcourt is the big reason for that. Like, they are so fun. They push the pace, they attack. Norm's decision making is such a bright spot there. So that was a really good call by you. And I think it juices up an offense that was so desperately in need of some kind of spark there. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So I don't think it was, there are no moral victories in basketball. You can't hang your head and say, you know what, we were right there. We were almost there. And certainly you don't want this to be a sign of things to come. I don't want this to be something that this team continues to do or show in other upcoming matchups. But having said that, I think you saw the offense. You saw what they did do well. And that's certainly an encouraging sign, because I don't know that Bam's going to go 4-13 again. And I don't know that Spo is going to make the same choices. And yet you still – I think you can trust Mitchell's performance, Powell's performance, and know that this is going to be a big part of what this team looks like in the future. And that's a good sign, and certainly something that's encouraging for Heat fans.
Turnovers and rebounding became an issue late in the game. They were not a big issue during most of the game, and they were a big issue during the preseason. They cleaned those things up basically right away until they sort of came back a little bit in those last couple of minutes. There were some things that I think you can find with Bam to build on and maybe scale coming up to try to get him more involved and get him a little bit more comfortable in the offense. Just overall, I don't know about you, but based on where I was coming into this game versus where I am coming out of this game, I feel better about this team coming out of the game than I did before the game. How about you?
Yeah, I think so too. I think, again, it was an encouraging game, and I thought they were in it. And being on the road in Orlando, certainly, this is a good Orlando team. This was a really good Orlando team last year, and they're a very good Orlando team this year. And Bane really did provide a spark there, but I think they still held their own against this group, and it should have been enough. Unfortunately, it just wasn't.
Magic shot 39% from three in this game, and the Heat almost won it. So, all right, let us know what you guys think in the YouTube comments. Do you feel better about this team coming out of the game than you did going into the game? What do you think about this season and these upcoming games? But thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow here on Locked On Heat.